everyone. Welcome to the Coder's Couch podcast, where you're invited into the crazy life and thoughts of Jason. That's me, so that I can tell you a little bit about what's going on in my life as I enter this new, exciting season. In this episode, I'll be talking about what the heck is going on in my life and what the new season that I mentioned even is. I hope you'll join me on this journey, and I'm looking forward to sharing it with all of you. Let's jump in. All right, so this is my podcast, I guess, quote unquote podcast. The reason I say quote unquote, podcast, if you can hear the quotation marks around that, is because it's not really a podcast per se, the way I think of a podcast, but it's more like, if you guys remember back in the day of blogs, that was like, back in the day of MySpace? Probably, I bet blogs even predated MySpace. I was like really young at that point, so I don't even remember them fully. Too young to be on the internet. And then blogs started adding a video component, and people were making vlogs. I don't really consider this to be a podcast necessarily. I more just consider it like it's like a vlog, but without the video, just the audio. It's not really a blog either, because the blog was online. You just read it like a news article. And so it's like if there was like an A-log thing, this is just audio, and that's good enough for me. That's kind of what I'm going for here. But welcome. This is maybe going to be a little weird. It's just me talking at myself. I can see myself. I've got a front-facing camera that's showing me my face, but you lovely folks probably won't see that. So I'm just going to be talking to myself, talking to and at myself, talking to all you pretty people, just really sending my thoughts and my words out into the world, and we'll see if anybody is there to listen, to interact with what I'm putting out there. And if not, that's okay. I figured this is an interesting experiment for me. So before I get too far into that, I think it would be fun or helpful. It would be helpful to just tell you guys a little bit about what this is, why I'm starting it, what the goal is. So long story short, I am switching careers from software development. I'm an application developer, and I will be attending graduate school this fall to become a marriage and family therapist. But the reason for that is I just did a little bit of soul searching, kind of hit this wall at my job of I'm not enjoying it as much as I used to. And as I started thinking about why that was, I recognized that my heart's just not in it. I'm not as passionate about software development the way I used to be. And I've only been out of school since December of 2020, out of college. And so I haven't been in the professional working world for very long. It's strange to say that I've had a career for a couple of years, and then I realize, maybe I don't want to do this for the rest of my working career. However, I am pretty introspective and self-aware. And so I knew what I was getting into when I started it, and it seemed like something I could make a career out of long term. I really enjoy problem solving, and that's basically just what the job is. Problem solving and learning is the life of a software developer. The general sense that I get as I interact with articles and videos on the interwebs is that it's just not something that I can really get behind for the next 40-ish, however many years I'm working. And so I decided to think about that, talked about it with my wife, with close friends and family, mentors. And as I sat in that, I just recognized that starting in college and after college, I've had the enormous privilege and honor of walking alongside them as they journeyed through hard things, hard situations in their life. And I got to just be present with them. But I had these privileges, the honor of walking with people in their hard situations. And I realized as I was doing this recent bit of soul searching, if my heart's not in software development, then where is it? I started looking at my past and the things I've gone through and how that has informed what I've been able to do in my time sitting with people and walking with them through the hard things that they are going through. And I realized that I would really love to help people, to sit with them in hard things. And as I got to the point of helping people, just that. And I was like, all right, cool. There are a lot of ways to help people. Definitely strikes me as like there's a job market for that. And so I considered being a real estate agent that's, helping people make probably the biggest purchase of their life. There are a lot of emotions that get wrapped up in buying a home and the dreams of starting a new family or creating new memories. And sometimes there's the grief of leaving behind the memories in the house that you grew up in or the house that you raised your kids in or something like that. But then I spent more time thinking about it and I realized that that is probably, while it's a good thing, and I thought it'd probably be something that I would enjoy, that it'd be something that I could get good at, it probably wasn't helping people in the capacity that I really wanted to help people. I thought about being a police officer for a little while. I thought about that and knowing that I want a family someday, had my wife to think about, had the thoughts of hopefully we'll have kids someday, I'll raise a family. A lot of the police officers I know are family men. It can be done, and that takes a toll on your family. I mean, I guess I don't know the full extent of it, but it seems tough. There are some sacrifices you've got to make, and you're stepping into danger each and every time you go out. And so, with the risk that comes along, the inherent risk that comes along with being a police officer, and my desires of raising a family, it would just be tough to think about a day where I might go out on patrol and then not come home. Don't want to put my wife in that position, don't want to put my kids in that position. I just realized that that also probably isn't the life for us as a family, and it's probably not the way to help people in the capacity that I want to. Really don't get to sit down with people, get to know people, get to hear their story or what they're going through. And that's the stuff that really sparks my passion. That's the stuff I want to do. I want to sit down in the trenches with them and walk beside them. And you basically just end up seeing a lot of the worst of people, which is unfortunate. Somebody's got to do it, and I'm extremely grateful for our police officers that are keeping our cities safe, keeping the streets safe, and protecting us. But that's just not the life I wanted to live, considering my other hopes, dreams, family goals, all that stuff. And so after that, I landed on therapist, or at least I thought about therapist. And my first instinct was that'll probably take too much time with schooling. I didn't know how much schooling was required for that. I figured it was something not as intense, but akin to becoming a doctor. It would just take too much time with the schooling and cost too much money, that the schooling would be too expensive and that I could get by doing something else, doing something cheaper. And so then from there, I was thinking life coach. Life coach is a good one. Life coach is relatively similar to a therapist, depending on what you do, the clients you meet. Although, as I looked into that, and I had at the time, as I was thinking about this, or I was meeting with a life coach and a therapist, and I asked them for their thoughts, and I got some of the pros and the cons. And life coaching is, yes, it's cheaper, it's less time intensive as far as schooling and training goes, and so that's a pro. Takes less time, takes less money. That's another couple other pros. But you also can't really treat people with something like EMDR. What is that? Eye movement dissociation something? Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. But that's just a treatment method that you can't do as a life coach, as far as I know. Could be wrong, but I was really thinking therapist was where I was leaning. And again, thought it was too expensive, too time intensive. And then I was having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and he's really wise, really well thought out. I was talking to him about this, and he reminded me of this. Let's say, hypothetically, if I become a therapist, I'm 25 right now. So let's say it takes 3 years. You're going to be 28 when you finish school. Well, you're going to be 28 either way, whether you go to school or not. So do you want to be 28 and doing something that your heart's not in it, you're not passionate about it? Or do you want to be 28 and in a career that you love, doing something that you're passionate about? And I looked at him and I was like, yeah, that's really great. That's a good thought. And then fortunately, I started doing my research. I actually looked into what it would take to become a therapist. And I was shocked to find that it would only take a 2-year master's of counseling degree. And I thought, oh, heck, like that's it. I thought it was going to be like a master's degree and then a doctorate and then all this and that and certifications out the wazoo. And depends on, I suppose, what you specialize in or what direction you move in with your career. But yeah, man, 2-year master's degree just to get started so that I could start practicing. Like, wow, that barrier to entry is significantly lower than I thought it would be. And so I started thinking about it, started looking into different programs that were in my area. Found one from a state school. Whole degree is only, if I did the math right, it's just a little over $20,000, which is awesome considering I also talked to a private university and same degree, or at least same credit hour length, 2 years, all that stuff, same like masters of counseling thing. And I was like, hey, how much is it going to be? And they were like, yeah, so it's $141,000. And I was like, oh gosh, that's not cool. Yeah, you've got options out there, and some of them make a lot more sense than others. Spent a lot of time again introspecting, thinking about it, talking with my wife, with friends. I was thinking, yeah, that's a great plan. I love that. But we've still got things to take care of. We've got some student loans that we had when my wife and I got married. We looked at our student loans, we looked at our financial situation, and we decided we would like to get these paid off as soon as possible. Our original plan when thinking about a master's degree was let's pay off the student loans and then I can start counseling or start pursuing this degree. So we were looking at a couple years at least, 2 to 3 years before I even start school, then another 2 years after that, and then however many observation hours to become licensed. And so that seemed like a long journey as I considered that with the tension that I was facing at my job, but just really the lack of passion behind my work. I was thinking, do I really want to do this for 2 to 3 more years and then I can finally start pursuing the thing I love? Well, ideally not. But if that's the situation we're in, then I can do that. I started thinking about online programs. I thought, wait a minute, what if we change the original plan? What if we put me through graduate school while I'm working and then I can get my degree? Then I can switch jobs. Then we are still taken care of. There's still a roof over our head and food in our kitchen. And yeah, that sounded like a good plan. I thought maybe it's possible. Again, we looked at our finances, we looked at the time commitment, just a rough estimate of what it would take, how many credits I would need to take per semester, all of that stuff, what my options were as far as schooling and how much it would cost. Online programs are, I mean, the ones I looked at least, they're way more expensive than the state school that I had mentioned earlier. The state school is in person, and the online programs were from private schools that were like 3 times the price. It was significant. And so we started looking at that and we decided, yeah, we can do that. We actually could make this work. Although then, of course, I'm working a full time job. I'm working an 8 to 5. My current role is about 45 hours a week. So 45 hours on top of school, on top of however many classes per night I need, plus the homework time, plus the studying time, plus whatever unknown obligations that triggers, plus all the things that I was already doing. Work, trying to do a great job at work. And when you're working a job that you're not passionate about, that can be a daily struggle in and of itself. You want to do your best. You know that you need to do your best because that's what your company is owed. That's what your boss is owed, and you want to honor them, or at least I did. I wanted to honor them. I wanted to honor my coworkers. Wanted to put my best work out for our customers, for the product that I was developing. And yet, to come to work and know that I'd rather be doing something else, that's tough. Yeah. It's hard. I'm sure we'll get into that in another episode. And so working a full-time job while going to school, that's a lot. Working a job you're not passionate about while going to school, even harder, I can imagine. And yes, I'm going to school for something I'm passionate about, but would the passion that is ignited from my studies be enough to offset the lack of passion that I'm experiencing at work? I don't know. I had no idea. And I was thinking about it. And then I decided again, I talked with a coworker. We're also good friends, and so I had told him what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing, kind of just my attitude at work, and he pointed me toward just pursuing school and leaving my job. And I thought that's fantastic advice. There was a lot of relief in that because I wanted somebody to give me permission to step away from that job. Again, I would like to just be clear, like, I love my company, love the people I work with, love the management, the leadership, all my team members. It's just the work itself that I was doing, I like the problem solving, but there are so many times where I'm just like, "I have no idea what's going on here. I'm new, I don't know how this app works." Um, and that and then wrestling like, well, I feel kind of like a burden when I'm asking for help from the more senior developers that are on the team, and just knowing that there's always going to be some amount of this in my future, that I'm always going to be not knowing, in the sense that you never master anything in the realm of software development. You can master a language, and then that language is gone in 5 years. Maybe not gone. That's the wrong one. Like look at COBOL. COBOL still being developed. That was a pretty early language. C is an early language. That's still a lot of people still use that. But you master a language and then it's outdated, and then your company needs something else, and then you need to move on to whatever. You move to a different company. You work on a new team or a new project or whatever, and you can't use that stuff. So then you got to learn stuff all over again. And I liked it when I was in school. And I'll clarify, when learning was my full-time job as a student. That was awesome. I loved doing that. And that's what led me to think that software development was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. But when it's a small portion of your job, and then the other parts of your job are problem solving, which again, I love, but it's reading code and understanding how it works. And that requires a certain level of domain knowledge where you know what the app is supposed to do and how it's going to be used. And you can't just look up a tutorial for that stuff, because it's probably proprietary knowledge that your company is developing. And I wasn't as passionate about it as I thought I would be. The constant learning didn't remain constant, as in I didn't get to keep doing it. Had other responsibilities that were taking up the time away from learning. I would spend my time at work, I would solve the problems that I need to solve, and then I would go home, and I know, or at least there's so much pressure, it feels like to me, there's so much pressure that in order to be a quote unquote good developer, you put in your 40, 45, 50, 60 hours a week at your job, and then you go home and you make supper, and then you sit down at your computer and you start working on an open source project or a personal project that you were doing, and you keep coding. You keep learning this stuff. Then you show it off to the world, and that's great. But it's not for me. I would get home from work and I'm like, I am tired and I'm not passionate about this. And I don't want to spend any more time doing it. I'd rather do something that I love, like making music, playing guitar, or sitting down with a friend and getting coffee and learning about their life, learning about the struggles that they're having and the celebrations that they're experiencing. Yeah, as I thought about the decision to stay at my current job, do school online in the evenings and on weekends, or the option to go to that state school that I mentioned earlier in person, which would mean leaving my job because, of course, you're taking classes during the week, during work hours, and your boss is probably not going to take very kindly to that if they have to compete for your attention when they're paying you for all of your attention during the workday hours, of course. my wife and I decided that it would be better for me to go to school full time. And that was a decision that was also contingent upon the application process. Obviously, can't go to a school if you don't get into said school. And so I applied. That's a funny story. I'll probably tell you guys that one in another episode. I applied, got in, was asked to come to the school for a group interview. Had never been in a group interview before. Had only like vaguely heard of such a concept. I've had a number of interviews for jobs. It's pretty decent at interviewing when it's just one on one. But I got to the group interview. I won't say it was easy. I was pretty nervous the whole time, but it was far less nerve wracking than I thought it'd be. Far more low key than I thought it'd be. So applied, interviewed, got an email about a week later saying that I had got in. So that's super exciting. So I applied for the program, got into the program. On the same day that I interviewed for the program itself, I also applied and interviewed for some graduate assistantship positions. It's basically like a teaching assistant, but you're a graduate student is the sense that I get from that. And so a lot of these positions were like you'll be teaching an undergraduate class. You'll teach one course, one section of a course, however many times per week that is, and then you'll be grading papers. You'll be grading things and helping the staff of that department, and that all seemed like pretty familiar because I had done a little bit of that as a teaching assistant in my undergraduate studies. So I applied for I think 5 of them, interviewed for 5 of them that afternoon, just in hopes that I get one. Before I got the email saying that I was into the program, that I was accepted into the program, I got an email from one of the professors, or I should say, maybe one of the faculty at the school that was part of their tutoring center. And she said, "Hey, I wasn't there the day that you interviewed, and you didn't interview with me. You didn't interview for this position, but you interviewed with one of my colleagues, and she thinks that you would be a good fit for this position that I have to offer. Do you want to have a last minute, like kind of impromptu interview? If you're interested in this position, here's the job description, a PDF. Let me know what you think." And so I looked at it, and the compensation, which apparently was pretty common for a lot of these positions, was tuition covered at 100%. So you work for the school, you get your tuition paid for, and then you get a small stipend on top of that. And so I was like, yeah, of course, that's amazing. I would love to. Again, just like let me throw my hat in the ring and we'll see what happens. And so I meet with her, I think the next day or maybe a week later or something. And so we talk, and I felt really good about that conversation. So she said, "All right, like let me check your references that you've submitted with your application and your cover letter." She talked with them. They picked up like immediately. So I think we had that call at like 10 a.m. And by 2 p.m., she had called me back and was like, "Hey, I got in touch with your references. You had glowing referrals. And so I'd like to offer you the job." And I was just like speechless. My mind was blown. And this job was not one of those you'll teach a class, you'll teach an undergraduate class, 2, 3 times a week or whatever it is. This one was even more low key than that, which is awesome. It was tutoring, basically tutoring the other tutors at the school on how to communicate, and then helping the staff, the faculty and staff at the tutoring center, and preparing materials for them if they need to lead a group tutoring session or other administrative tasks. I guess not every responsibility was laid out. It was here's a description of the position. Here's kind of like a general overview of what you'll be doing. And so I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with undergraduate tutoring. I was an undergraduate tutor. A peer tutor is what we called them at my school. You take a class, you do well, and then the professor asks if you want to tutor the next classes. If you're a freshman, you do well. Then your sophomore year, the professor asks, do you want to tutor the freshman next year? Or I guess this year when you're a sophomore. We had a center for that. And so my job is going to be to tutor, like I said earlier, tutor the tutors on how to communicate effectively, how to meet the students where they're at, how to set up presentations, supporting those tutors in whatever they need in order to effectively tutor these undergrad students. And so that's going to be a lot of fun. That's another thing that I'm passionate about along the lines of meeting someone where they're at and walking alongside them, sitting with them like in their education, trying to hear what's tripping them up and then re-explain it. Sometimes they just need that to be explained in a different way, or sometimes they lack the motivation to pursue that themselves, to dig in and try to understand the material on their own. Such a beautiful thing to explain a concept to somebody and just watch their eyes light up. You can see it on their face. You can see it in their eyes when they get it. And it's such an awesome thing. I'm looking forward to it. While I won't be sitting down with the students of an individual subject, I'm not going to be tutoring like biology students. I'm not going to be tutoring like dairy science or mechanical engineering students because I didn't take those classes, don't really know how to tutor those subjects. I'm still going to be sitting with these tutors who do know that, and they've got the knowledge, and maybe they need help articulating it. They're hopefully going to learn how to communicate in ways that they've never done before. And I think that's just an awesome thing. Being able to have an idea and get it out into the world, that's half the battle right there. Contributing slash making the world better. It's one thing to have an idea, which a lot of people have ideas. It's another thing to be able to share that idea with others. And then further still, another thing to actually implement the idea. But we really focus on those first two: have an idea, get the knowledge, understand the knowledge, and then articulate it in a way that the person who's listening can understand it and can take hold of it for themselves and then run with it. Such a good thing. So I'm really looking forward to that. So this podcast exists because I think it's just going to be fun to process what I'm going through as I make this switch from software development to marriage and family therapy. That's hopefully fascinating. It's fascinating to me. I'm really excited for the journey. And so maybe somebody else will find that fascinating too. And if not, if I'm just here talking into the wind, that's okay, because I have the experience of processing what I'm learning, of processing the whole experience, and that is just so invaluable. I'm a big proponent of processing your experiences. What was there's a there was some quote somewhere I read in a book. It's been a long time. This would have been a book I read in early college. I think probably just not a book for college, but just a book I read during that time. And there's a saying, I think, or there's this idea that experience lends itself to wisdom, or like experience is how you get wisdom. And that's not entirely true, because you can have experience. You can have experience, you can make a mistake. And if you don't take the time to learn from that experience, you might just make the same mistake again, or you're going to find yourself in a similar position. And so, what is more accurate is evaluated experience brings wisdom. So, I don't want to just travel through grad school having these experiences and not thinking about them, not thinking deeply about them. Of course, I'll have to, because part of that is like, how else am I supposed to do my assignments? But I think just processing that for myself, what the material makes me think, what it makes me feel, what it reminds me of, those kinds of things, thinking about that, talking about it, articulating, again, here's having this idea, gaining the knowledge, and then being able to articulate that to someone else. That is invaluable. And so maybe someone will join me for this ride. Thanks, Mom, for listening. And maybe nobody does. And that's okay. And it's just me here talking at myself. And I'm just really excited about that thought, about the thought of sharing what I'm learning, what I'm going through, because I know there's opportunity for a lot of growth and for me to embrace the material at a deeper level. It's kind of, I was just listening to a podcast today from Mark Queppet. He's a life coach. He's got some really great stuff. But I was listening to a podcast today about it's the difference between like you can watch a YouTube short, or you could watch a short video or something online, and you could learn how to do something, or you could learn this. Maybe it's a self-development technique, or maybe it's something communication, or you're learning to do something new. You can watch a video on it. You can get the knowledge. But until you need to find a way to internalize that at a much deeper level than just, I know it and I have it And if you don't do anything with it, then it's just going to sit on the surface. But somehow watching a video compared to like reading a book on the same topic just does something different. You're able to internalize it at a deeper level, and that's the goal. I'm gonna read these books. Gonna go through. I assume I'll be reading books in college. I'm gonna read these books, and that's already internalizing it. And then I want to internalize it deeper by talking with you guys about it. And I think that's just gonna be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a good time. I think it's going to be very enlightening. It's going to be eye opening. Maybe somebody gains something from this if anybody else is out there. And if nothing else, then I get it. Then I get this experience and it's awesome. And I can look back on this. It's kind of like keeping a journal. If you've ever kept a journal and then you go back to it, or you made notes in a book and then you reread that book and you look at what you thought, maybe you're like, wow, I have the same thoughts now, or I think this is really profound, or now I've seen the effect on my life from this passage or this text or whatever. Sometimes you just look at it and you're like, oh wow, I was really immature, I was really silly. I remember when I thought that, and I'm so glad I've grown up. And so maybe that's what this can be for me in the future. Maybe I'll the hope is that I go through counseling, this counseling program, that I do my observation hours, that I open my private practice, and maybe in my private practice I look back on these episodes and I'm just like, wow, what a silly goose that I was. What a newbie in the realm of counseling. And like my thoughts are just like, wow, there's a big difference between theory and application when I'm learning about theories of counseling and then I'm actually putting them into practice with clients and getting to see how clients embrace them and how they react to them and things like that. So I just think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm starting it now. I haven't started school, so I start school in a couple months. But I wanted to start it now because I'm going through this process of like I'm still working at my job. I'm still trying to do my best, like I said earlier, and I'm trying to honor my coworkers, honor my boss, honor the company to whom I still owe my best. They're still paying me. They're still, I'm still hired. I still have a job there. And so nothing's changed from 6 months ago when I started having these thoughts, and I was working there and I was pretty committed for the foreseeable future to keep working there. Between then and now, when I know I'm leaving, my eyes are on the door and I've got the next thing already set up, they still deserve my best. And that might be a hot take. It's kind of a shame that might be a hot take in today's society. But I think that's the right thing to do, and I'm going to try to do my best with it. Maybe it's an interesting experience where you're leaving, you're taking off, and it's not just around the corner. It's not like here's my 2 weeks notice and I'm switching jobs like within a month or something like that. It's like, hey, here's my 3 month notice, and for the next 2.5 months, I'll just keep doing my best, and I'm gonna continue to stay motivated. And I don't even know entirely what that looks like, but that's my hope. That's the ideal outcome. As I go through this process of figuring out what it looks like to honor my coworkers, honor the people around me, still do my best, even though I'm not in love with it, and I've already got my plans for the next season of life lined up. And my wife and I are then trying to figure out what transitions this brings on and what changes need to be made. Maybe this will be helpful to somebody too. And if not, I'm processing these experiences. I'm processing my thoughts and my emotions and processing everything that I'm going through. And that's just huge. All right. I don't know how to end this because this is my first episode. This is my first time like being on a podcast. This is my first time doing anything. And I'm the guy in charge. So that's crazy. So I'm just gonna say, thanks, love you all. Don't do drugs, stay in school. Bye.